Star Trek, Starfleet Academy, Chapter 11. I don't get it. What is this Maru thing? McGee's question threw me. Of course, she wouldn't know, being a communications specialist. Her world was a tapestry of frequencies and codes, acoustics, linguistics, and signals. Very technical, but didn't involve many decisions. Yeah, right. It's a death sentence, that's what it is. I sat down between Robin and Jana in a secluded section of the lounge, well away from the main screen. It's as impossible for us to break as the clue to who really blew up the lab. We can't beat it. The whole semester is ditched. Not very fair, Jana said. They should either arrest us or clear us, but not this. McGee frowned. I still don't understand. What exactly is the Kobayashi scenario? Kobayashi, I corrected. Kobayashi Maru. It's a simulator scenario that doesn't allow you to win. I have no idea what the format is, but no matter what you do, the computer's programmed to countervail everything you try, and you eventually lose. How far you get into the program means something, and that's the trick, but you still lose. Not everybody has to face it. Only 5% of command cadet teams are made to face the no-win scenario. Usually it's random. They've gotten some great commanders out of not-so-great cadets by tossing them into the no-win and driving them just crazy enough to try things nobody in their right minds would try. But that's pretty rare. Generally, it's just a killer program and you get set back. You go to the bottom of every academy list and have to claw your way up all over again. But why would they do that to us? McGee struck the couch cushion. Because it keeps the Academy's command school records clean for this year. No expulsions, no court-martial. This is the command school's 9th year in a row without either of those. They want to make a decade. If no one's ever beat the Kobayashi Maru, Corin mourned, then why even try? So we don't go down in shame, that's why, Jana told him irritably. Well, I began slowly, it's not exactly that no one's ever beaten it. One cadet did beat it. Who? When? James T. Kirk. That's who. And when? Corin gave Robin a victorious shove that almost knocked Robin off his chair. Then it can be beat. McGee nodded. If he can do it, so can we. I shook my head. Nobody's done it since. Well, you know him, David, Jana said. Maybe you can ask him how he did it. Oh, yes, Jana, and I'm sure he'll tell me if I just pay for the coffee. You gotta be kidding. We're not supposed to win. That's the lesson. Imagine asking James Kirk to help us cheat. Corin reached across the table and shook my knee. All we're asking is for a chance to beat the unbeatable. Come on, you're the best and the brightest, aren't you? Oh, yeah. Me? I glow in the dark. Hey, we've still got your command access code, remember? Corin pointed out. You haven't tried that yet. Maybe you can get through to something we could use. And don't forget, David, Jana added, you could sift through the security database and see if there's any clue about whoever bombed the lab. I looked at her. How would the security database have that in it? Well, somebody got in, right? Maybe they did what we did, used an access code to bypass security at the lab. You could see whose access codes were used to get into the lab in the hours just before the explosion. I'm sure the investigators have thought of that already, Jana. Maybe it'll mean more to you than to them. Maybe you'll think of something they didn't. That's it, Corin said. Mission 1, check the security database. Mission 2, find out how James Kirk beat the unbeatable. Cadet Forrester, the future is yours. You can do it, David, McGee encouraged. Robin just looked at me, his face a palette of doubt and worry. Well, I began thinking I do still have to help Commander Chekhov install... I cut myself off. The Klingon heavy cruiser was supposed to be classified. I knew that, yet I'd almost slipped. Had I come to trust these people that much? They seemed to trust me, even though we'd been caught in the lab and I owed them something. All right, I said. Sink or swim. The non-security database could be shifted into classified with the command candidate's personal access code, and guess who had one? It meant we were trusted. So much for trust. I punched in my access code in Lab Delta Foxtrot, which was being used as an alternate for Delta India, so there was no trouble hooking into the research Sturek had been doing. But none of his conclusions were there, only the unorganized details about metallurgy and residue that had been fed in from the fragments of those attack ships at Bysea. There was no proof here. Whatever Sturek had been referring to must have been on something portable, a pad or a cartridge, probably for security reasons, destroyed in the explosion. The security had worked too well. Security. And it hadn't worked well enough to keep a bomber from setting a trap. Had that person meant to get Sturek too? Or was that just an unfortunate bonus? Yes, the investigators would check the lists of anyone who had used a command school access ID to get into the lab. So what? I could look too, couldn't I? Maybe the names would mean something different to me than to a bunch of security grunts or elitist investigators. Punch, pick, code. The list came up for the past 6 days. The names were mostly instructors at the academy, mostly science staff, and about a dozen command candidates, all team leaders and science officers. Nothing out of the ordinary. Then I saw a name that made my heart jump. Robin Brady. Why was Robin's name here? To a security squad, Cadet Robin Brady was a command team engineer with no red flags attached. They would pay no attention to his appearance on an access code to Lab Delta India. An engineer could easily need to go in there. Only to me, Robin's team leader, did this look out of place, and only because I knew Robin never had any reason to come into that lab. He and Sturek barely spoke and certainly weren't working together on the Bysea project. I stared and stared at the name until it made me cold. Reason after reason came and went about why Robin might have come to Delta, but none stuck. After I ran out of reasons, I started inventing excuses. And those were even more flimsy, of course. It didn't make sense. I ran the list again, and the second time through, Robin's name seemed to flash at me again and again. Saboteur. Can't be, I mumbled, taking anchorage in the sound of my own voice. Why did it have to be so quiet in here? A vital clue, but only to me. Was Robin's shyness hiding something that even I had never noticed? Crazy! I shook my head. There was just no reason. Not only no logical reason, but not even an illogical one either. Robin just wasn't the type to get involved with espionage. He got nervous at being late for a seminar. But he was the only one here who wasn't a command team leader or science officer. The only one. David? I bolted back from the computer terminal and almost toppled out of my chair. My hand slid on the console and knocked the data offline. Sir! I choked. Commander Chekhov sauntered in the lab. What? Did I frighten you? I'm sorry, sir. It's just all this trouble with Sturek and the bomb. It's got me jumpy. Yes, your friend is doing well enough for a suspect, Chekhov told me. And I couldn't tell whether or not he intended to make me feel better or worse. He had a mild concussion and has been under observation in his quarters. His communicator has been programmed to notify security if anyone discusses the incident with him, or anything about Bysea. So I recommend you don't try. Oh, more good news. No, sir, I won't try. I don't want to get him in any more trouble, or any of us. Good. He handed me a set of computer cartridges and said, Would you please load the Poznikov series, sessions 14 to 42, for the senior simulator runs of this coming week? Yes, sir. Sir, aren't those really old missions? Chekhov grinned. As the wolf said to the songbird while devouring the old pheasant, sometimes the oldest things are the tastiest. He started away from me. What was that supposed to mean? Just what I needed, something else that didn't make any sense. An ancient Russian folk tale, he tossed back over his shoulder as he situated himself at the master simulator inlet on the other side of the lab. Well, that explained everything, didn't it? Old Russians again. No wonder they were old. Everybody else died of confusion trying to figure out their sayings. Problems were piling up on me, and I was feeling the weight. Sturek had to be cleared of suspicion. How did I know he was innocent? Good question. We hadn't been acquainted all that long, and there was more than just being crewmates. He might have blown himself up just to divert suspicion away from himself, but I couldn't believe he would blow me up, too. He knew I'd just walked into the main lab. He could have waited until I was gone or done it before when he was alone. He hadn't shouted a warning or even told me to take cover. If I pushed my imaginings, I could believe he might be a saboteur, but I didn't believe he was a murderer. And Robin Brady had to be cleared too. He wasn't in trouble yet, but it was only a matter of time. Sooner or later, somebody in the investigation would find out he was the only orange in the basket of apples. Both of these problems rode upon a bigger problem. In order to solve them, to clear my crewmates, I had to stay in the command school. My team had to remain a command team. If we were set back a semester, that meant being broken up and starting all over again, probably as crew in other command teams, and I wouldn't be selected as team leader again. I'd be helm. I couldn't let that happen. I had to stay at the command school and remain team commander, and that meant only one thing: beating the Kobayashi Maru no-win scenario. And there was only one person who knew how to do that. I tried to be good. I really tried. No, I didn't. With the excuse of loading the Posnikov series of maneuvers into the simulator computer, I was provided with a perfect excuse to dig through the ancillary programs regarding the no-win test. There were no answers here, of course, since the test itself had encrypted into it over 400 alternatives, all leading to failure. The program was ready for just about anything anyone could think of, and not even a command access code could get into that file, so I wasn't even tempted. What did tempt me, I'm ashamed to say, was a personnel file with the name of the only cadet who had ever beaten the program: the private records of James T. Kirk. It can't be that easy, I muttered. Could it? As if unbidden by human mind, my fingers tapped in my command access code and keyed the Kirk file. The screen scrolled merrily with information. Home, Riverside, Iowa. Father, Commander George S. Kirk, Starfleet Security Division. Missing in action. Mother, Winona Kirk. Product Manager, Crowell Corporation. Deceased. Siblings, George S. Kirk, Jr., deceased. Another sole survivor, I murmured and thought of Magia. Then came the mission encapsulations, dozens of them. Omicron Delta, Gamma Trianguli, Neutral Zone, Triacus, the Gorn, the Horta, the Medusans. Scroll after scroll of missions and troubles and sacrifices, even time travel, and he was still here to talk about it, to teach us about it. I hungered for the time to read through all these missions and relive them, but not this way. These were just outlines, no details, no feelings, no conclusions. I wanted to read his logs from those days and really understand what he'd gone through and what made him so famous. He didn't seem like a hero in person, except for that little flash in his eyes. And his words. When he talked to us about space, he was a hero then. Kobayashi Maru. I flinched. It appeared on the screen and my heart started fluttering. Across the lab, Commander Chekhov was involved with the other 74 maneuvers in the Posnikov series and not paying attention to me. Good thing, because I was sure he could hear me sweat. Perhaps he felt my eyes, for he chose that instant to glance at me. Problem? No, sir, just something tangling these codes. Some heavily encrypted data spliced onto the program for a mission. You shouldn't be playing with that. How the hell did he know? I clicked on the word Kobayashi, hoping to clear the screen before he tapped in, if he hadn't already, and up came another font, a mock graffiti sprayed across the mission title. Tiberius was here. The chair sunk under me because its pedestal melted. Next went my legs, and after that my spine. Chekhov pushed away from his console and strolled over to sweep up the puddle with just my cerebral cortex sticking out like a straw. David, you're not supposed to be in that file. My head rattled. I was nodding. Do you want me to cancel it out, sir? I'll have to ask you to cross-cancel. The thing won't let me out. I know. He leaned on the top of my screen housing. I froze the database. Did he have the noose tied too? I looked up at him. Why, sir? Because I'm not the one who should decide whether or not you breach privacy. With a sinking stomach, I watched as Chekhov opened his communicator. Chekhov to Captain Kirk. Please join me in Lab Delta Foxtrot right away. Little stroll down memory lane. James Kirk's voice was mellow and unrevealing as he bent over my shoulder and looked at his own personal files. I'm sorry, sir, the only cadet in the room mourned pitifully. The only slime, the only slug, the only worm sweat. Sorry for what? Kirk surveyed me with that sizzle in his eyes. You're the only one who's ever had the nerve to look. It was right in there the whole time, and nobody else ever checked. Go ahead. Scroll the scenario. Won't get you anywhere. Well, that was an order. What could I say? I don't want to, sir. Please don't make me. No, I tapped the board. The specs of the Kobayashi scenario ran before me. Nothing outlandish. A stranded Federation passenger freighter inside the neutral zone. No Starfleet ship allowed in there. Atmospheric leakage. Survivors begging for help. Seemed like any average program, except that this one wouldn't let the player win. The player could choose not to go in, of course, but nobody did. A refusal to assist a ship in distress would be the blackest mark anybody could imagine on a performance record. We'd all learned that our first semester at the academy. Then the good stuff showed up. I peered at it with aching eyes and turned in astonishment to Captain Kirk. You cheated! He gave me a little shrug and a nod. Changed the rules of the game. But why? Because there's no such thing as a no-win scenario, and I don't like to lose. He crossed the room to a replicator and pulled up a cup of coffee. I pivoted in the seat and asked, Isn't reprogramming the simulator against the rules? He didn't say anything, so I looked at Chekhov and asked the same question silently this time. Chekhov raised his brows and refused to comment. Kirk blew across the top of his cup of coffee. After I beat the Kobayashi Maru, the administrators talked about tightening the rules, but they never did it. In fact, I got a commendation for original thinking. I learned to anticipate my enemy, even if my enemy is just a computer. There was something in there I should remember, but I couldn't make any sense of it. How can anybody anticipate an unknown? Since I was in this deep anyway, I might as well sink all the way. If you use this to cheat, then the Academy wouldn't be able to test how you handled a no-win scenario. Winning would be a foregone conclusion if you altered the programming in your favor. I didn't program it in my favor, Kirk said. I didn't program a victory at all. I only made it possible to win. I still had to do the winning. Chekhov just leaned there on the counter, one hip up on the edge, his arms folded and one hand pressed to his mouth. And behind that hand, he was grinning at my expense. Oh, there just weren't a rule against striking a senior officer. Forrester, Kirk began, noticing that my attention strayed just a hair. Sir, I hear your science officer's under confinement. Has anyone in your crew been pushing you to get him out? He knew, and still he was making me say it. Well, yes, sir. Good crew, he said. You were faced with two choices. Gratify your crew by leading them in the wrong but popular action, or let them down by making an unpopular decision that left regulations intact. That little break-in incident wasn't my favorite subject of conversation. I gazed at the deck at Captain Kirk's boots. Yes, sir. Kirk moved just enough to make me raise my eyes. Looks like you already faced a no-win scenario. Was he congratulating me for breaking into the lab? Was there a senior officer in this place? On the grounds or in space who could actually say exactly what he meant at any given moment? This wasn't a time to be unsure. Was he going to make me guess? Do you want me to close the file down, sir? He sipped his coffee. Suit yourself, and get my Klingon heavy cruiser working. A simple nod to Chekhov made the commander shove off the counter and fall in behind the captain as they both headed for the door. Captain, I called, pushing out of my seat. And I was pretty sure it left an impression on a key portion of my anatomy. Kirk only half turned. Question? Which option did you choose on the Kobayashi Maru? He regarded me with the teasing amusement I'd never get used to, and then did what he did best, said nothing and said it all. The winning one. Chapter 12. This is the Kobayashi Maru. We have struck a fission percussive mine. We have hold ruptures. Position Gamma Hydra Section 10. Life support systems failing. Can you assist us, Lexington? Can you assist us? Data on the Kobayashi Maru, Mr. Sturek? On the science monitor over Sturek's head, a raft of data scrolled out about a big ship, a cruising freighter. Crew of 81, Sturek read off, boiling all the numbers down to what mattered. 300 passengers. I felt my brow crease. 300? Life support is at critical failure. 18 dead. Can you assist us? Plot a course to the Kobayashi Maru? I knew those words were expected of me. There was no way around them. But speaking them rubbed my throat raw. There was an option to abandon the crippled ship. But no cadet would ever take it. That would be an automatic loss, a negative score count. Course plotted, Janice said. Her voice was quaking. Take us in. Corin nodded, but only once. Helm's answering. The starship around us seemed to swell. There was a difference about this program, a new feeling, new sounds. These weren't the sounds and sensations of a science vessel. The sounds were deeper, thicker, the bleeps and whirs more complex, the scanners brighter, more detailed. This was a starship. Warning, entering neutral zone. We're in violation of treaty, Captain, McGee informed by the book. Red alert! The whole bridge lighting scheme shifted slightly into the red, and our eyes adjusted. Shields up, I ordered. No point waiting until the last minute. Was I anticipating? I had some idea of what was coming. Conflict, battle, but no idea just what I'd be facing. Klingons, of course, but how many? And in what formation? I'd had my courses in maneuvering and battle strategy. I knew all the textbook moves and all the proper responses that would go down in my log as having done my best, the right thing at each point, yet somehow I wasn't reassured. This scenario, unlike most, wasn't designed to test what I had memorized. It was going for something completely else. Before us on the big screen, the elliptical form of the neutral zone was etched out in a grid pattern of red lines on the black curtain of space, with the entry point now behind us. In the middle of this big gap in Starfleet restricted space was one of the daring who crossed the neutral zone without protection, taking risks like this day's. The Kobayashi Maru in distress. Captain, Corin blurted suddenly. Reading a Klingon warship flying on the port bow. Range, 1,700 kilometers. Reading a firing sequence. Here we go, I muttered, then tossed over my shoulder. Open hailing frequencies. Corin, weapons online. Online, aye. David, Captain, 2 more ships, Corin rasped. Approaching on a parabolic course, 22,000 kilometers broad on the starboard stern. Then he coughed slightly, as if the words had dried him out. Double shields astern, I ordered. At the nav console, Janice swallowed hard and tapped her board. Double shields astern, aye. 3 ships. That changed everything. Any time more than one ship on any side entered a battle situation, there had to be organization. There had to be cooperation and method, patterns and plans. In my mind, I ran through all the known Klingon techniques for a 3-ship assault on one ship. Frequency open. McGee's voice was thready, too. They're hailing us, Captain. Audio. This is Captain Gorlock of the Klingon Empire. You're in violation of the Neutral Zone Treaty. This is your trial. How do you plead? This is a Starship Lexington. We are on a rescue mission and have no hostile intent. Guilty as charged. Prepare to die. Grasping the arms of the command chair, I stood up. I just couldn't stay in that chair very long. I just couldn't. Positions of the Klingon warships? I requested. Corin glanced at his board. They're all moving, coming into some kind of spiral pattern around us. I think it's designed to keep us from turning without facing at least one ship. On the screen, one of the warships swept past above us, and a few moments later, a second one came by on the lower part of the screen. They were cooperating. If they decided to fire on us, which they would, they'd coordinate their firing sequences the way a boxer hits an opponent, to keep the wind driven out of us and never let us take a breath. Keep our shields to them as much as you can. McGee, put them on visual. My nervous anticipation started to sizzle into something else. The screen flickered away from the view of the Kobayashi Maru, disabled, adrift on black sky, and provided a full-faced vision of a particularly slick-looking Klingon. Unlike most Klingons, this one had his hair tightly braided and draping across his ridged forehead and down to his shoulder plates. Dressed in polished leather body armor with brass bolts and clips, he was majestic and settled in his command status, not scraggly or brutish at all, like most Klingons I'd seen pictures of, and I realized for the first time that I'd never seen a Klingon in person. And this was designed to startle me, to bust the stereotype before I had a chance to take refuge in it. Worked. Fine. Captain Gorlock, I greeted with a harsh tone. Federation citizens are in immediate distress. There's no time to send for a civilian rescue ship. On my authority, Starfleet is taking charge of the rescue. As soon as we effect beaming of the passengers and crew on board, we'll evacuate the neutral zone. Stand down, or we will defend ourselves and the freighter to the fullest of our ability. Gorlock's grand voice filled my bridge. And who are you to dictate policy in the neutral zone? This was it. Now we'd see if I selected right. I am Captain James T. Kirk. I am Captain David Forrester. On the wide vision of the Klingon bridge, Gorlock sat back in his chair, his eyes abruptly wide and his mouth hanging open. Then, unexpected, his eyes lit up. His whole face took on a sheen of delight and joy. Forrester! He stared and stared at me. I blinked back like a stunned fish. Now, I hadn't expected that reaction, that succulent, slurping astonishment. I'd expected something quite different. After all, I'd reprogrammed the simulator myself. Cadet Kirk had found 3 choices when he reprogrammed the computer in his favor all those years ago. 1, he could dumb down the Klingon artificial intelligence and make the captains fight clumsily, make mistakes, and miscalculate. 2, he could weaken their armaments and shields, just making everything less potent and the ships easier to beat. 3, he could program the simulator to make the Klingons respect and fear him personally, a pre-programmed reputation. I had no idea which James Kirk had picked, but I'd gone for the third option. Make the Klingon captains dread fighting the great David Forrester. That way I could keep a little of my self-respect. After all, how much respect could I cling to if I made the enemy weaker? If they feared me, this was only a psychological advantage. I'd still have to fight them, full force, and outmaneuver them in open space. But now, in this instant, as I read Gorlock's vicious eyes and saw his posture change and watched the faces of the Klingons on his bridge crew who came into the frame, my stomach sank and my skin began to shrivel. My blood went cold as I looked into Gorlock's unmasked delight. I'd made a critical, blistering error. Much more than a simple mistake. I had completely underestimated my enemy. Instead of inflicting them with dread, I had just announced to a pack of rabid hounds, "Here I am, fresh red meat." Gorlock leaned forward now as if to push his elegant face into my bridge. His voice lowered to a hungry whisper. "What a prize you shall be." Then he snapped something in Klingon at his bridge crew, and the screen swept back to a view of space and the powerful warship churning past our bow. Gianna turned and looked at me, her face a mask of horror. "Uh-oh!" Corrin sat frozen to his controls, staring at the screen. Drenched in the glue of my own miscalculation, I started shaking. Those weren't humans. Why had I expected them to react like humans? I thought the reprogramming would make them hesitant to attack, might hold back, might even run. Under the eyes of my crew, I gushed out a rough sigh. "Oh, God, I screwed up." "They're breaking formation," Corrin gasped. "No pattern now. They're not taking any headings I can track. David, what should I do?" Evasive maneuvers." Was that the voice of a captain, that dull, muffled sound? "Just what I always wanted," Corrin sighed. "An exercise in futility. Why not?" "They're firing!" But the ship that fired on us wasn't the one directly in front of us. It was one of those at our stern, not Gorlock's ship. What did that mean? The bridge rocked, and went a shade darker as the red alert lighting intensified and other lights flickered and went dark. "Return fire," I said. What else? Gorlock, who was the one who had contacted us, had spoken for the others, so why hadn't he been the first to fire? My crew went about their jobs fatalistically now. I saw it in their movements and their faces. They're trying to get the best scores they could in a losing situation. We'd had a chance of winning for just a flicker. Then my mistake kicked in and we were facing the noose. My psychological advantage was shot to hell. "Engineering," I asked over the hum of power-up. "Can we throw a tow beam on the Kobayashi Maru while we fight?" Robin's face was pale and sweaty. "Only by sacrificing firepower almost 30%. "Don't do it." "Acknowledged." He sounded relieved, but didn't look it. "Emergency vector to heading 404, Corrin." Strange how calm my voice sounded. Was I fatalistic now too? Had I given up? They're all attacking, Jana shouted. All at once. Are they supposed to do that? I thought there were attack patterns, Korn said, struggling to maneuver through the sweeping warships as they looped past the main screen and were tracked by other screens around the bridge. The circle of screens gave us an idea of where those ships were in relation to the body of our starship, almost as if the monitors were windows. Of course, there weren't any in the ceiling or the deck, and from time to time the ships just disappeared, tracked only by the statistical data on other monitors. I had to keep my eyes in 20 places at once. Of course, each sweep of each ship gave me an idea of where they were heading. Jana, handle the phaser banks. Fire at will. Who's Will? She mumbled, but she started shooting. Phaser fire whined from our banks, shot upon shot, striking the enemy shields and skittering across the energy bubble, and were answered by shot after shot from the 3 Klingons, but not in any order. Their attacks had gone completely random. I've never heard of this, I uttered, trying to think as the bridge rattled and smoked around me. The smell of burning carpet and frying electrical connections made me dizzy, but somehow pared my thinking down. Then I looked up. They're competing, I murmured. They're ignoring each other. They're not working together. Because they all want to be the one to capture the great you, Korn groaned, nearly choked by puffs of acrid smoke from his helm trunks. That's it! I rushed forward to the helm, pausing between Jana and Korn, barely able to keep myself from trying to do their jobs. But if I did theirs, I wouldn't be doing mine, and now I knew how to do that. Come about to 6-7 degrees true. What? That'll put us right between 2 of them. Do it, Korn! All right. Sitting duck, coming about. Jana, plot a course down 1/3, straight down. She glanced at me. You mean? The numbers don't matter. Just be ready to move. They all want credit, and they'll compete to get it. They were all working together till I told them who I was. Now it's a free-for-all. So we'll give them their chance. Go between them, Korn. Make us a target. Korn fidgeted under my left elbow. Coming between 2 of the warships. Third one is veering in to block our path. Prepare to fire at all 3 warships at once. His scorched face pivoted to me. Are you kidding? That'll drain. I grabbed his shoulder. I'm not kidding. Okay, fire! 3 lancets of phaser fire broke from our banks and sizzled across the reduced shields of the 3 enemy ships. But divided by 3, the phaser energy was depleted. Korn was right about that, and couldn't bust through the remaining shields. Then, and boy did I need something to go right, all 3 enemy ships opened fire from 3 sides of an imaginary triangle, all aimed at us in the center. Engage evasive, I shouted. Korn hit his helm. Jana reinforced the gravitational holds on the ship's inner structure to keep us from breaking apart, and the starship ducked into a horrible drop-off as if we plunged from the top of a cliff. The deck dropped out from under us. A sickening surge made my stomach heave, and I fell. Above me on the upper deck, Sturrock was thrown hard against his own console, and over there Robin came hurtling over the bridge rail to land beside me in a rolling heap. On the main screen, a view of what lay above us. The 3 Klingon ships were caught in a spiderweb of each other's disruptor fire. Ha! Korn came to his feet. How did he even find them? Sturrock! I grasped the command chair and hauled myself up. Condition of those ships! Sturrock pulled himself back to his sensor readouts and played the board with one hand. Looked like the other was numb. All 3 ships scored direct hits, he reported. Power ratio slipping. 2 ships completely disabled. Engine power down to 5%. Third ship is breaking up at the main structural joints. They are effecting abandoned ship procedures. He turned, leaning hard on his board, and looked at me. You did it, David. The quiet avocation in his voice was like a fanfare on our smoky, smoldering bridge. David, Magia interrupted quietly from her post. They're sending distress calls. They're completely disabled. Why wasn't the program shutting down? Was there something else expected of me? I'd won, hadn't I? Prepare to retrieve escape pods and beam their survivors aboard. And ready a tractor beam for the Kobayashi Maru. We'll tow it out of the neutral zone. Well, why not? I had to keep going until the program shut down. Maybe the program wanted to see how many we could rescue. Beep, 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 beep. I swung around to the alert klaxon coming from the helm. What? I demanded. Another ship! Korn brushed crumbs of insulation off his board and gawked at what he was seeing. Then we saw it on the main screen, too. Another Klingon ship, but this one with 4 nacelles, a torpedo-like body, and a main bulb as big as a whole bird of prey. My voice tore through my gullet. A Klingon heavy cruiser. Damn you, Captain Kirk.